product-specific content, thought leadership, random relevant articles that provide value. Some forms of content you need to have, even though you don't want them, and others you absolutely should have. On this episode, Bryan DeLuca and Nicolette Emmino determine two things. Lego instructions suck, and building Barbie Dream houses isn't as hard as it seems when you have the right tutorial. Also, there should be a significant amount of content that has nothing to do with your product on your site. While each company will have its own ratio, one thing is certain: there must be a ratio. Go on, listen in, and don't forget to subscribe to the Insomnicat YouTube channel.
So what about your online content ratio? This was another thing I came across actually in a group, and somebody was asking, how much branded content should I have? How much non-branded? How much thought leadership content should I have? And I get really excited about this because I really love when companies talk about stuff that has nothing to do with them. That's my favorite thing. It makes me feel like they really have it together. If they're really providing values like that.
So what's it? Okay, so give me an example.
So Kraft, an example of my favorite thing ever.
I know you. It's one of your favorite companies. You
Kraft
like macaroni and cheese.
is my favorite. Yes, I do. I love food. But the thing is when you go to their site, right? You go to their site. They have recipes, right, which obviously serves them, but they always incorporate.
But it's helpful.
It's helpful
because people don't.
But it's helpful.
Yeah.
Right. But they also have, pairing your wine with your party, right? Like, which wine should you serve at this event? Like, that's got nothing to do with craft. You know what I mean? Like, it's like parenting tips and back to school lunches and, all kinds of things that are really, really relevant to the community. And they're not just sitting there going, hey, our craft CEO is so awesome. Here he is, and he's going to talk to you.
Yeah, like use Kraft singles on your kid's sandwich for their lunch. Yeah,
the only sandwich you should ever serve is a Kraft cheese sandwich.
Yeah, and I think the thing with that is, and once again, I feel sometimes I feel like a broken record on certain things. But what happens is it's about relationship, right? And what happens is when you start providing non-branded content, like what happens is users start seeing that relationship very differently. It becomes an exchange. So, you're not just, selling me product. Now you're actually teaching me something. And you're creating a very different dynamic and relationship with a user when that happens. So I think what happens is you create that exchange. And in return, what happens a lot of times is like, the user's like, oh, wow, I got back to school advice on my child's lunch, or, I learned a new recipe. And then what happens is they go back for more.
I really like this recipe, but also I really like this recipe. Let me follow the recipe and go buy, it serves its purpose. I mean, if they're going to go buy all the ingredients, they're going to probably go purchase the product that was in that recipe. But
and I think, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and I think what happens is, Nicolette and I have a good friend, Michael Knight, who works for TTI, and I remember hearing him talk one time. He was the keynote speaker at some event, and he was talking about conversions. And what he was saying is it takes more than one touch point to create a conversion. And what happens is, let's use this recipe thing. Kraft, by you coming in, looking at recipes, looking at your school lunch, they're actually creating different touch points for you to eventually have you become, to purchase, right? To become a conversion, but also to be a brand loyal customer, because now they're creating a different relationship with you because they've helped you out by, showing you tips or tricks or new recipes. So it becomes a different thing. And what happens is, as you are able to provide more touch points to your end user, you're the person you want to sell to, or who your customer may be or may not be sometimes, right? As you're able to provide different information, what happens is you're really able to connect with them at a different level, and you create touch points, additional touch points that eventually lead them to becoming either brand loyal or, becoming a conversion for you, in terms of selling your product. Like you said, with the recipes, you go and go, oh, if I'm following that, I should use the craft singles in this recipe or whatever, there's so many products,
but that's not to say that there isn't value to certain things that are really brand relevant. Let's just go with macaroni and cheese for a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say like a video about how behind the scenes of how a box of macaroni and cheese is made. And watching the powder. I think that could be really cool for people, I think that could still, people are probably like, what's inside my mac and cheese, and to show them that there's, and this could apply to anything.
Right.
But I think there's still an opportunity to stick your products into your content, but just sitting there and going, hey, this is a box of mac and cheese. It's got these ingredients and this is what you're going to get. That's stupid to me.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Because, think about how many videos are out there of people making really simple recipes and they're just videotaping, like pouring the stuff in the bowls. How many of those have you seen in I don't even know how many of those may be on the internet. It's pretty insane. But what happens, people love watching things being made, as crazy as that sounds. So many of those, there's so many videos out there, and they're just, sort of like of a, piece of chain link being made, food being made. People love watching that progression. They almost get mesmerized by the process. So that's, for someone who, like a company like Kraft that actually creates things that need to be made by the end user, and in many cases they do, it's interesting to convert that recipe into visual content for them. And we see that a lot, and that's nothing new on the internet, but that is something, and I don't know if Kraft does that, but that is a really good idea for a company like Kraft to, create visual content that really goes along with the recipe. What's funny, so, my daughters went to the Barbie Dream house, and, like you get that giant instruction booklet.
Did you have to buy two of them, by the way?
Yeah, I had to buy two. So, and these things are massive. If you've never seen a Barbie Dream house, you could pretty much live in it yourself. But the crazy part is, yeah, the crazy part is about it is, like, I actually didn't even follow the instructions. And I think it was made by Mattel. It owns Barbie. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's Mattel. But they actually had a video on it. And it was so much easier to watch the video in the step-by-step than anything else. And the video was maybe 6 minutes to put this Barbie Dream house together. And what was really cool, yeah, it was 6 minutes or something like that. Maybe it was 10, I don't know. But it was a short video. And you're going to yourself, you're looking at this instructions and you're like, man, this is going to take 7 hours to put this thing together. I don't even know. You get in this place, you're like, wow, this is going to be crazy. And, they had this video. And this video was a lady putting the Barbie Dream house together and literally showing step by step. First, you take this piece and you snap it to that piece. And literally, it didn't take the 6 minutes because you know how it is. You have 1,000 parts and you're digging around for the parts. But what happened, and if you laid them out like the instructions always tell you, but no one ever does, maybe it would go quick like that. But what would happen is I was watching the video. I had the video going on my, on my phone. And as she's doing this, she's like, grab this part and grab that part. And I would grab the two parts, pause the video, snap them together the way she, said snap them together, and then move on to the next piece. And so that
Lego will
process,
ever come up with something like that?
I don't know. But that process, that instruction process, and back to the Kraft thing, that instruction process went from being something that if I would have just been reading those instructions, it taking me, an hour, let's say, I'm making that up. I don't think it would have taken an hour, but, an hour, because of the way Mattel actually very intelligently created this video, it actually sped up my process. So it helped me out. And now think about it. If I want to buy a really complicated toy that needs to be put together again for my daughters, because, they will. I'm probably going to buy it from Mattel because Mattel gave me nice, easy instructions. It went simple. Guess what? And also think about it. those are big items. They really don't want them returned because people can't put them together.
Yeah.
So also they're not just selling me other products, but they're also in the long run saving returns going back to the stores, and then the stores having to ship them back to Mattel, and then they're losing money because now they have they're getting orders back because people maybe think they're missing pieces or they didn't understand it was too complicated. So what happens is they're doing a very smart thing by producing that type of content for the end user.
Yeah, so I mean, the original thought was about kind of the ratio then. So I mean, I think it's fair to say that there should be a decent amount of product or brand related content on the site, but I don't know, maybe you disagree, but I think there should be more non-brand related content and thought leadership, right? Because thought leadership is in there too. So, like I guess this would go against people's business strategy, but I think it actually pays in the long run to have more content not related to your product that you're actually selling.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, I mean, we see this all the time, and we do this for companies all the time where, say, for instance, they're making autonomous vehicles, right? Like I don't even know who makes it, I mean, it's, everyone's trying to make an autonomous vehicle, but say, for instance, they're, autonomous vehicle manufacturer, right? What happens is they may write articles on just sensing or vision. Do you know what I mean? Or things like that, where engineers, are looking up those things, and then they see this end market of, this end product of the autonomous vehicle. So I agree. There's parts of it that your user base, and this is any industry, your user base is going to be interested in that are general enough that sort of relate to what you do. They need to be in the same ballpark. If you own autonomous vehicles, you don't want to write, articles on how to, pack your suitcase for vacation. You know what I mean? So it needs to be somewhat related.
Well, unless
right?
you were going to go on vacation in your autonomous vehicle.
In your autonomous vehicle, I guess there. Bad example.
There's still a link.
Bad example. But yeah, there's still a link. I guess you can find a link to most things, right? But you get my point. Like it should be somewhat related to what you're actually doing. And I think that's really, and
related to, and what I always like to say is, it's really about what are the other things, once you define your target audience, what are the other things that they're interested in, related.
Right.
Right. And I use actually, there's this example that I use about wheelchairs, and I'm a wheelchair manufacturer. That's probably a thing, right? They sell wheelchairs.
Yeah.
And
people make wheelchairs, yeah.
Right, they make wheelchairs. So I'm trying to sell more wheelchairs, or I'm a company that just sells wheelchairs, a wheelchair vendor. And what are the people, who these people may be disabled, or they're injured, or whatever the case, or sick, or so what are the other issues that relate to those people? So maybe it's about insurance and medical and things like that, or selecting the best, or other things around the home for convenience for those who suffer from a disability, or the elderly, those things in the shower, the bar in the shower.
Absolutely. It's interesting you say that, because one of a really cool content examples and I love what this company's doing, it's actually like a house inspection company. And, they actually, what's crazy is how often you have a house inspected, but they did an inspection for me, and I continually get their newsletters because it's really cool. They're actually like, well, how do you decorate your house for Halloween? Or how do you, decorate your house for the holidays and not make it look too gaudy? Or what type of dinnerware works well? It's stuff that has to do with your home. But what's crazy is, think about it. It's interesting enough to be general enough that has to not do with like house inspection. And they do have some house inspection stuff like leaky roofs and things like that, like what to check. But they also have other stuff that keeps you generally interested. Because what happens is, think about it. The more they get stay in front of me, the next time, someone moves, maybe I'm going to recommend them. I'll be like, oh, check out this company's, check out these guys. They're actually, forward the newsletter even, because I know these people are, so I think what happens is staying in front of people, even if it's not, if the average person buys a house once every 20 years, I'm just making that.
What's crazy. That's what I was just going to say. Here's what's crazy. There's a small business, right, actually doing things correctly. And think about what are the chances? How many times are you going to buy a house in that area your lifetime? You know what I mean? So
that's my point. Exactly.
That most of those people aren't even going to need them again. I mean, they just genuinely won't need them. But they're actually implementing an awesome strategy that bigger companies should be implementing, all based on the referral process. Really?
Right.
I mean,
and think about it. Like say for instance, they do the inspection for someone that's a first-time home buyer, right? So say for instance, maybe they buy a condo, they buy an apartment, and then guess what? They're ready to move into their starter home, right? So they're in front of them again, and that sometimes happens relatively quickly, like within 4 years, right? So they move to their starter home. They're using them again because they're staying in front of them. Then they go, oh, okay, I have outgrown my starter home because now I have a family, and then they move on to a bigger home, right? And now there's another opportunity again, if they're staying in front of them for that long, right, as a user. And then what happens is, guess what? Now they're gearing towards retirement, maybe, but they're staying in the same local area. Maybe now they're downsizing and going back to an apartment or a small starter type home. So, and think about how many people who have bought homes over the years, right? Almost everyone buys a home at some point. I mean, granted, depending on your living, where you live, sometimes it's apartments, but you get my point. Like eventually, a lot of people are actually purchasing properties where you need an actual inspection. So think about how much referral and how many times they may actually even have you as a customer through your life if they're able to stay in front of you. And I know we're sort of like way off the topic of sort of the ratio, and I think the thing we're really getting to and we're really pointing out here is the ratio is different for every company. I don't think there's a set, my opinion is I don't think there's a set ratio I think every website, every company is very unique in what they do. And I think that ratio is dependent.
But there should be a ratio. It should not be. You know what I mean? Like that's
absolutely.
There has to be a divide, some sort of division there.
Right, and I think that user who was asking, what's the ratio? I don't think you could say there's an average ratio. That's like when people go, well, what's the average, the average bounce rate? Well, it really depends because you see drastic differences in the same types of sites, like informational sites. You'll see drastic differences. Are they maybe all in the same ballpark? Yeah. But if they change what they do, can they make that bounce rate better? I think what happens is, I think trying to figure out a formula that works for everyone is not good. There is not some average ratio or, that of content that every site should abide by, or even in certain categories should abide by. I think what happens is as the situation comes, you're creating content, you're seeing how it performs. Guess what? If it doesn't work, why didn't it work? Can you do something else to make it better? Should it be in a different channel? Then maybe it worked, maybe it doesn't. And if it still doesn't work, if you've tried everything you're capable and you're looking at that intent and other stuff, and it's still not working, guess what? You probably shouldn't do that content anymore. And then what's going to happen is you're going to find things, that actually work really, really well that you didn't expect as you try things. My dad used to have an expression like you find the best gold at the biggest bucket, at the bottom of the biggest bucket of crap. Do you know what I mean? And it's because you got to dig deep to find the best gold sometimes. And sometimes as you're testing stuff, you can be like, wow, I didn't really expect that to work, but it did work really well. And then do more of that. Was it just a single one-off case, or is it now you could repeat that? You can repeat that type of content, and is it always going to work, or was this just one-off? And I think when you realize is that the thing that works well, continue to try, continue to test. And I think what's going to happen is over time, every individual site will find the correct ratio for them. But you got to spend the time, you got to do the meaning making, you got to really understand what's going on to get to the correct ratio for you and your company. You can't, I don't think, blanket going, what's the correct ratio, is ever going to work for anyone. Even out of the gate, I don't think that would work. I don't even go, I think you should try various different things, even out of the gate, if you're even first starting a site, but you're going to figure out what the ratio is. Just like, did you ever make let's go back to the craft thing. Did you ever make a recipe and you added too little pepper in it or too much pepper in it? And next time you're going to add a little less or a little more, or it's like anything else. You're experimenting with it until you get it to the perfect.
My cooking, every one of my recipes is like that.
Yeah, but you get my point. Like,
that's it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much a very by sight and taste person when I cook. But over the years, you start learning. Okay, if I put this much basil in, this is sort of what it's going to taste like, right? Or if I do this,
right.
or if I do that.
I mean, that's just simple. If X then Y. I mean, it's even
right. But that's
good cook for that.
But that's over time, right? You've learned something. And my
Mm-hmm.
point is, it's no different than your website. Over time, you're going to learn what works and doesn't work, and basically do more of the stuff that works, do less of the stuff that doesn't work. Sometimes you got to do the stuff that doesn't work because there's a need for it, or I shouldn't say it doesn't work, but it doesn't work as well, right? If you're not gonna go, okay, robots give me the best traffic, but I don't ever write about robots because we don't make robots here, or whatever the case is. So you don't want just randomly want to write about robots because you think you're going to get traffic on it, or it gives you traffic. Maybe there was that one-off case where you needed to, but my point is, I think what happens is you have to say to yourself, what's the correct ratio of content, types of content, and topic of content. And every company is different. So if you guys, out there, if you guys, same thing, always feel free to shoot us a question, leave a comment. We're always happy to help. And I think really what happens is everyone needs to start understanding and doing what we call meaning making meaning out of all the information they have, out of all that data, and really understanding at a deep level, not just, here's what I see. It's about looking at this type of content. It doesn't always mean that just because things are performing well that the intent is correct, because they could always perform better if you change some of what you're doing.